Okay, let me apologize. I had another meeting that went very late, long, I should say. But let's get started. And today I'm standing with several members of City Council. Councilmember Abby Payne, who's the chair of Homeland Security and Public Safety. Councilmember Evan Shabazz, Councilmember Cisneros, Councilmember Pollard, Councilmember Plummer, Councilmember Alcorn, Councilmember Jackson. I get everyone? And then, of course, standing here with Chief Fenner. Let me just say it's going to probably be a little lengthy today, so saying that to you up front. It will probably be a little lengthy today. So let's get started. The event over the past have highlighted a need for police reform in our country, in our community. Our advocates, victims, and their families are crying out for accountability, transparency, and changes to improve police policies and build mutual trust and respect between the police and the community and police. I've always said that the two must be on the same page, working together in the interest of our city as a whole. Last year, on June the 10th, if you can recall, we met in this same room the day after George Floyd's funeral, and I, along with council members, signed Executive Order 1-67 on the use of deadly force in the Houston Police Department, banning excessive use of force, banning chokeholds, requiring that officers have a duty to intervene, restricting when officers can shoot at moving vehicles, call for a use of force continuum, requires officers, when possible, to give verbal warnings before using deadly force, and requires comprehensive use of reporting. I signed that, and many of the members of City Council joined with me in signing that on June the 10th. I will say that many of these things that we put in place through the executive order, those things are still being debated in Austin at the Capitol or being debated up in D.C. But those things are in effect already in the city of Houston. The FAT task force also indicated that while these measures represented positive steps in the right direction, the department should add the following, and that is a ban on no-knock warrants for non-violent offenses. The existing executive order still allows for no-knock warrants as long as the warrant has been approved in writing by HPD Chief of Police or his designee, and the warrant has been signed by a district court judge. Today, we are banning no-knock warrants for violent offenses, which is the recommendation of the task force. On June, and I do want to acknowledge also at the outset this task force that was headed by Larry Payne. You're going to be hearing me mention his name several along with the members of the task force, the 45 members. So Larry, at the very beginning, I want to acknowledge and thank you for your incredible leadership. And I might also add that prior to this press conference on last night, Larry Payne convened, I think it was about 25 or 27 members of the task force, where I went over the recommendations of the things, the steps we are taking today with that task force, and had a very enlightening conversation with them. On June 24, I then appointed the Mayor's Task Force on Policing Reform, chaired by Larry Payne, and asked members to study Houston Police Department policies and procedures. And last September, shortly thereafter, I assembled the 45-member task force chaired by Larry. The task force presented 104 recommendations, and as I said then and since then, I agreed with the overwhelming number of those recommendations. Over the past several months, we have been deliberate and methodical in our approach, which required time, additional study, identifying individuals to hire or appoint to key positions called for in the reforms. And quite frankly, the lack of funding affected the implementation and execution of some of the key recommendations. Today, I am going to announce how we are moving forward to implement additional reforms called for by the task force and some of the major proposals including in the task force recommendation. In a brief summary, we are changing the Houston Police Department's policy on body-worn cameras. I'm announcing the hiring of a Deputy Inspector General of the new Office of Policing Reform and Accountability, restructuring of the Independent Police Oversight Board to include appointing a new chair, changing how members of the public can file complaints and access information on a newly designed website with 5 data dashboards regarding police transparency, and a roughly $25 million investment in crisis intervention over 3 years. The task force recommended that we integrate respectful, consistent, and meaningful community engagement and input into existing work practices, including recruiting, training, patrolling, and promoting. We are expanding community engagement into cadet training, as well as post-training in that first year. We will continue to partner with Sam Houston State University, but we will broaden our reach to include a partnership with Texas Southern University, and I've had the privilege of talking to President Hewlett already at Texas Southern, and he has graciously agreed to partner with us, and with Prairie View A&M Ruth J. Simmons Center for Race and Justice to conduct community surveys, use technology to obtain real-time feedback, ask for community input on recruiting materials, and we will publish the findings. All of these recommendations come from the task force. We are already utilizing a video circulating using officers, for example, in sororities and fraternities in order to encourage others to join the Houston Police Force. In the past, in terms of the application process, we have asked for people's credit scoring. We will no longer be asking for credit scores anymore. And we will continue to hold and expand our PIP meetings. With regards to independent oversight, the task force recommended that we overhaul the current Independent Police Officer Board to support a full-time paid administrative and investigative staff accompanied by a diverse civilian board to hold HPD accountable to a higher standard. Today, I am signing an executive order restructuring the board and appointing Steve Ives, the President and Chief Executive Officer of the YMCA of Greater Houston, to serve as the Independent Police Oversight Chair. Steve and I have had several conversations over the last several weeks about his role in serving in this capacity, and the conversations have been very constructive and productive. And quite frankly, Steve has said it not one time but several times, Mayor, this is a defining moment in our city, and I am here and ready to serve. And so I want to thank Steve Ives, and you'll be hearing from him shortly. Today, I am appointing a Deputy Inspector General also of the new Office of Police Reform and Accountability. Krista Okorafor is a Harris County Chief Prosecutor currently overseeing felony cases. In that position, she led and supervised investigations and prosecutions and tried numerous jury trials. She also served as a prosecutor in the Major Narcotics Criminal Division and as a diversion program prosecutor. She is a graduate of the University of Texas undergrad and a graduate of Thurgood Marshall School of Law of Texas Southern University. Crystal will have a limited staff to investigate complaints both internally and externally, and to report to the Independent Police Oversight Board, as well as to the Chief of Police. Additionally, community members will be able, and let me pause there, because I want to thank Ms. Okorafor, Crystal, for also agreeing to serve, and where is she? Right there, for also agreeing, you'll be hearing from her shortly, for agreeing to serve. And she's had many conversations with my staff, and I've had a chance to visit with her as well. And and took time to woo her away. But we are very appreciative of the fact that she viewed this as a transformational moment as well, and has agreed to serve in a full-time capacity. In addition, community members will now be able to submit complaints online, and they can also submit complaints to community groups like the NAACP, LULAC, the Anti-Defamation League, the Islamic Society of Greater Houston, the Mayor's Office with People with Disabilities, the Mayor's LGBTQ Task Force. They certainly, and others, can accept complaints and then forward them on to the office. The complaint form will be in multiple languages and accessible, and quarterly reports, as asked for by the task force, recommended by the task force, will also be provided. And so I'm very appreciative of the recommendations coming from the task force and the changes that will be made. And at this time, let me first bring on Crystal Okorafor, who will be the Deputy Inspector General, just to introduce herself and to make a few comments. Crystal.
Thank you, Mayor Turner. First and foremost, I'd like to thank God. I would also like to thank my amazing support system, my husband, my 2 sons, and all of my family and friends, without whose support I would not be here today. When I was first considering this position, I thought about the words of my parents that they said when I was growing up. They said, "Time doesn't change things, people change things." With that in mind, I thought about my 2 sons and the kind of world I'd like to see them grow up in. And I thought about how the change needs to happen. And I knew that I must accept this position to be a part of the change for my home, Houston, Texas. And with that said, I would like to thank all of the people of Houston. I thank you all because during these trying times, when so many cities have been divided, Houston has been united. We have been united in our outcry for change, and the Office of Policing Reform and Accountability is a direct result of the change the people have asked for. I want actions, not words, to be the hallmark of this office. I want the people to know that I am here, and you are welcome anytime. My door is always open. Thank you guys, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you so very much, and we all look forward to working with you. And then the new chair of the Independent Police Oversight Board will be Stephen Ives, the president of the YMCA. Stephen.
For the last 25 years, I've been a humble community servant and a CEO of various YMCAs now in 4 different cities. Along that journey, I've learned that being a CEO of a YMCA isn't just about swim lessons and programs and great facilities. It's about being part of change in community. I didn't know when I came to Houston that I was going to have an opportunity like this. And I have to say, Mr. Mayor, I was blown away when I got the call, but I also recognized that you were inviting me further along that journey of self-reflection and understanding and appreciation of what my role as a public servant and a community-engaged individual and the CEO of a YMCA really meant and was about. I spent some time in consultation with my closest advisors, our board of directors, executive committee at the YMCA, and the leadership team with which I work. And at the end of the day, it was unanimous. You know, when I asked the question, Steve, you got to do this. How can you not do this, Steve? This is the most important thing that's going to happen in this city, and quite frankly, in this country. See, I know a little bit about accountability. I'm a dad. I lead a staff team. And I recognize that good people with good intentions, with a strong system of accountability, just do a better job. And they're happier, and they're more effective, impactful in their work. That goes for the officers who serve on the police force, knowing that they have a system of accountability that rewards those who do it well and holds accountable those who step out of line. For a community, knowing that that's in place, but also knowing that we have a say in it. So I understand my job to be helping people to understand that we have a say in it, but also figure out how best to engage. Because keeping our community safe keeping our community thriving, helping all people feel like they matter and that they can make a contribution is really up to all of us, not up to any one institution. So I'm proud to accept this opportunity to serve. And Mr. Mayor, thank you for blowing my mind and helping me expand my perspective of what it means to be in this role. And I can tell you, as I talk to my colleagues across the country about YMCA work, community engagement work, these are the kinds of things all of us are beginning to lean into. We've learned, especially in the last year, how important we are, how vital we are to the community, and what we're going to become in the years ahead. So on behalf of the YMCA Board of Directors, our staff, the members of our YMCA, and the community, thank you for the opportunity to be in this role, and I look forward to serving.
Thank you, Steve. The task force recommended a balance of power dynamics between the Houston Police Department and Houstonians by releasing body-worn camera footage of critical incidents in a consistent and timely manner. I will tell you that we will adhere to the recommendations on the release of body-worn cameras that was outlined in recommendations 1 and 2 on page 52 of that report. Let me pause now and bring up Chief Troy Fenner.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor and council members. If a chief of police or police officers can't listen and hear the citizens and feel their hearts, we're not going to be successful. Thank you, Larry Payne, and all of the task force members. This is a great piece of work, and this is the start of much more to come. Thank you for being here. My union president, Doug Griffin, thank you for being here. The mayor said it. We can't just talk transparency and accountability and don't do it. Everywhere I went in this city for the last few weeks, and even when I was executive assistant chief, the one question would come, Chief, what y'all gonna do about releasing body-worn cameras? What are y'all gonna do about it? When are y'all gonna? The mayor has given the marching orders, and I totally agree. 30 days. Within 30 days, we're releasing all officer-involved shootings where there is an injury or a death, period. Moving forward in my administration. What does that mean? And how should it work? Some may ask, you know, why does it take so long to release the videos? It's a lot that goes into it. I don't want to release something premature where we don't have all the angles. If it's a shooting where you have multiple officers that discharge or multiple officers who viewed it in their camera, we have to get all that. We have to go through redactions by law. And there's some incidents by law that we can't release. If it's in a private home, a private space, we have to get the permission from those individuals to release that. So just understand those challenges. But one thing I can pledge to you today, we're releasing it when we can legally release it. I spoke with our district attorney. She's in agreement with the release, and we are going to release it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And again, in recommendations 1 and 2, we'll implement clear and transparent dissemination and timelines. And the report speaks of 24 hours of a federal and our state prosecuting authority opens an official investigation into a critical incident. The HPD should share all BWC footage with the prosecuting authorities within 24 hours. And then 30 days, in addition to, the HPD should publicly release BWC footage of a critical incident, which includes display of excessive force and or death in custody within 30 calendar days. So there's a critical incident, or in the case of excessive force, or a death in custody. And then 7 days or less within 24 hours the HPD should notify the prosecuting authority 7 calendar days prior to releasing the body-worn camera footage of a critical incident to the public, except when the chief of police determines that pressing circumstances require a shorter time period for release. Again, those are the recommendations of the first 1 and 2 recommendations on page 52, and those are the recommendations that we are going to adhere to. In addition to that, today we are launching the Police Transparency Task Force website. I know a number of council members have participated in this process. I know the chair of Public Safety, Homeland Security, Councilman Pollard and his staff have been integrally involved in this process, as well as others. It will go live, these dashboards and website, the end of May. This recommendation is included in the Mayor's Task Force on Policing Reform. The website will include an online complaint form and 5 data dashboards showing key statistics about the Houston Police Department, citing release, traffic stops by race, ethnicity, and gender, use of force, HPD disciplinary actions, and HPD to diversity, amongst other things. The online form represents a major leap forward from the current process, and people will be able to begin the complaint process at their convenience and anonymously if they choose. I think we have a brief presentation on this website and the 5 dashboards.
This video is an overview of the technology initiatives that are part of Mayor Sylvester Turner's Police Transparency Project. For this initial phase of the project, Mayor Turner identified 2 big areas of focus. The first is an online complaint form. This will give people the ability to begin the complaint process about an HPD officer online.
Do we need to start
The second
over?
are a series of data dashboards that look at police performance.
I think you need to start
These 2
over.
areas of focus are rooted in 7 recommendations.
And while they're doing that, let me also acknowledge and thank Arturo Michelle and the legal department, his legal team, for the work that they have done on this, on the reforms. And then all of my departments, HITS, IT has been very much involved, so I want to acknowledge and thank them as well.
Be available in 5 languages. It's mobile ready and it's accessible to people with visual impairments.
All right, let's try it again.
The first thing to note about the new online complaint form is that a person can submit an anonymous complaint. Anonymous complaints follow a different procedure than formal complaints.
Now let's see what that happens.
This video is an
Okay,
overview
I think,
of
here we go.
technology initiatives that are part of Mayor Sylvester Turner's Police Transparency Project. For this initial phase of the project, Mayor Turner identified 2 big areas of focus. The first is an online complaint form. This will give people the ability to begin the complaint process about an HPD officer online. The second are a series of data dashboards that look at police performance. These 2 areas of focus are rooted in 7 recommendations from the Mayor's Task Force on Policing Reform. Let's look at the online complaint process first. Currently, in order to start a complaint, you download a PDF from the Houston Police Department website. This PDF requires a lot of personal information. When it's complete, it's signed and notarized, and an investigation can begin. However, this presents a barrier for people who want to start a complaint but aren't ready to provide such detailed information. We've reviewed what other police departments in Texas are doing and identified the most user-friendly processes. Then, we built a new online complaint form that's user-friendly. The complaint form will be available in 5 languages, it's mobile-ready, and it's accessible to people with visual impairments through screen reading software. The first thing to note about the new online complaint form is that a person can submit an anonymous complaint. Anonymous complaints follow a different procedure than formal complaints. The details of that procedure are provided at the very beginning of the form so the user knows what the next steps might be. The form also collects incident information such as date, time, and location. It also provides the ability to collect more details about the incident. These details are based on yes/no questions such as, were you arrested or were you injured? If the answer to any of those questions is yes, then a box appears to collect more information. There is also an option of including witness information, as well as providing photo and video evidence. Under state law, a formal investigation does require a signed and notarized affidavit, but we hope this online form makes it a lot easier for someone to start the process. Next, I'm going to show you 5 different dashboards related to data about the Houston Police Department. All of these dashboards follow a click anywhere approach, meaning you can click on any bar, any chart, any slice of the pie, and it will automatically filter the data. 3 of these dashboards are looking outward, measuring HPD's interaction with the community. The other 2 dashboards are looking inward, exploring HPD disciplinary actions and workforce diversity. Most of these dashboards will be updated once a month, depending on the data source. Each dashboard will provide specific information about the frequency of updates. The Cite and Release dashboard shows encounters and offenses that ended in a citation and no arrest. You can filter by the offense as well as by race and gender. The Traffic Stops dashboard visualizes data that the Houston Police Department reports to the state as part of its racial profiling reporting. This allows you to dig into the reason for the traffic stop, the reason for the search, as well as the results. You can filter by any of these reasons as well as by race, ethnicity, and gender. The Use of Force dashboard also allows you to filter in similar ways. This dashboard provides an overview of use of force statistics, and by clicking anywhere, you can filter by the reason for the encounter, the outcomes for subject and officer, and the race or gender of the subject or officer involved. The last 2 dashboards focus on statistics about the Houston Police Department operation. This is the HPD Disciplinary Actions dashboard. It allows you to filter based on the reason for the discipline, the type of discipline issued, the number of days suspended, and the number of years on the force at the time of suspension. This data provides officer-level details using a de-identified officer number. Finally, the HPD Diversity Dashboard provides a look at the race, ethnicity, and gender breakdown of the Houston Police Department. You can filter by rank, and you can also dig into the details to understand diversity statistics based on age and years of service. We'll end by emphasizing that this is a group effort. Thank you to everyone involved in the feedback process. It's the result of recommendations made by the Mayor's Task Force on Policing Reform. All City Council members were invited to participate, and we received valuable input from many of them. Within HITS and HPD, there were several people who went above and beyond to complete a lot of work under very tight deadlines, and it's the result of many people behind the scenes working together.
Thank you very, very much. And again, I want to thank the Chair of Homeland Security and Public Safety and Councilmember Pollard in particular for their work and assistance in getting us to this point. And then the Mayor's Task Force on Police Reform, item 27, spoke to issues at the municipal courts, improve fairness in Houston municipal courts by requiring alternatives to jail time for people who can't afford to pay fines and fees. Along the same time as the task force was working on the reform, the court was working on the vision for a safe harbor court. This court was designed to be in conjunction with the Mayor's Complete Community Initiative and has answered the objectives of the task force. This court is designed to assist defendants due to financial hardships, medical issues, or any issues arising from COVID-19 or issues of hardship that citizens are experiencing. This was a vital piece of the Mayor's Task Force on Reforms. Judge Elaine Marshall, where are you? If you'll just come and tell us exactly where we are on that.
Good morning. Just want to thank Mayor Turner for his tremendous support in this endeavor. Houston Safe Harbor Court is located at the 1400 Lubbock location. We are open from 4 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. We will see every citizen who walks through the doors who need the assistance that the mayor just spoke of. We're Houston strong. Things go wrong with Harvey, with COVID, but if there is a situation where you need assistance with any of the traffic citations or warrants that are pending against you, please do not hesitate to come into the courtroom. We also have 3 dedicated judges that will see you every time. There won't be anyone else but those 3 judges and myself. And the good beauty part of Safe Harbor is that the mayor is allowing us to take it to the communities. So we will be in the city of Houston in different communities at least once a month, coming in so that you feel comfortable to come into your community center, talk to us about what's needed to bring to Safe Court, and then we will be able to assist you along with the tax reform. That was what they asked for. We were working on it together, and we are just waiting for you to come to us so we can help you.
Thank you, Judge Marshall. I want to thank you for your incredible leadership on this initiative. So thank you very much. The Task Force on Crisis Intervention. The task force recommended that we expand existing partnerships between HPD, mental health professionals, and social service organizations to lighten the load on officers when responding to vulnerable populations, such as those experiencing mental behavioral health crises, domestic violence, human trafficking, homelessness, substance abuse, and others. And quite frankly, we do ask our police officers to do way too much and put them in some very precarious situations where the outcomes sometimes are not positive. And so the recommendation of the task force was to address these vulnerabilities within our system and to make some changes. Quite frankly, this portion was restricted due to limited funding. And so let me start off by thanking the Biden administration on the American Rescue Plan because my recommendation to the council members is to utilize about $25 million over the next 3 years to address this portion of the reforms. The task force said we should expand the crisis case diversion annually to hire additional counselors, which is currently in part being funded by the Health Department and Harris Center. They put that cost at $272,140 annually. We will finance this piece and move forward for the next 3 years, $272,000 and a little bit more annually. The task force recommended that we increase the number of mobile crisis outreach teams by 18 teams, which means to hire 36 additional clinicians working with our local mental health providers in order to address this piece. The annual cost on this is about $4.3 million. We will move forward on this item and will cover the cost for the next 3 years. The task force recommended that we add 24 additional crisis intervention response teams. That annual cost was something like $8.7 million. We're not in a position to do that completely, but I am moving forward on adding 6 additional CERT teams. That would be an annual cost of about $2.4 million. We will do that over the next 3 years. And assuming that there are other dollars that come in from other sources, we certainly can beef that portion up. The task force recommends that we implement the clinician officer remote evaluation core proposal to provide telehealth technology to HPD crisis intervention trained officers on patrol. The annual cost of this piece is about $847,875, and we will move forward on this. The critical importance of this piece is that even if there is not a clinician or a counselor riding with those officers and they come up on a certain situation, they can use the telehealth technology to put them in touch with a clinician to get advice or suggestions on how to move forward. And then the task force recommended the citywide domestic abuse response team with victim advocates and forensic nurse examiners. I might add that we use about $6.2 million on this program through CARES funding through the end of December, but the cost of going forward can be anywhere between $800 to $1.2 million annually, and I am going to recommend that we move forward on this piece. All in all, on the crisis intervention alone, the investment that we are going to make with council members' approval over 3 years is a little bit more than $25 million. And the reality is that is not counting, council members, what we did yesterday, where we diverted a number, provided funding, working with the county to divert a number of people away from having to interface with police to other areas where they can get the care and the services that they need. Neither does it take into account what we are doing this week and today through the weekend, and that's through our Turnaround Houston program, where we are providing 2,000 job opportunities for those people who are hard to employ, those people who are part of the reentry program, and that's taking place starting today and through the week, providing 2,000 job opportunities. But this is a critical investment in helping to build out the ecosystem that will bring about public safety through addressing public health. Because quite frankly, public health and public safety are interchangeable. And we cannot expect and ask for police to be the responders in all cases in these matters, because quite frankly, it increases the number of contacts and especially poses risk, not just to the recipient, but to police officers as well. And I think on balance, this will address holistically the needs of the people in our community. Better speak to this piece, and I've asked Dr. Purse over the last several weeks to take the point because this is more in the public health category. And so, Dr. Purse, if you'll come to speak to this.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, Chief Finner. Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd like to start off by recognizing Mr. Wayne Young, who's the CEO of the Harris Center, who's with us here today. He was able to find time to come with us. And the Harris Center has been a tremendous partner with the city on many, many projects over the years. So thank you, Mr. Young, for finding the time to come. So we're going to talk about a little bit about mental health and mental illness. And one thing I want to point out is that all of us have issues with depression from time to time or anxiety. Some of us can be a little compulsive. Some of us can be a little bit paranoid. So when we talk about mental health, when I was in medical school, it was explained to me that those who are mentally healthy are people who are able to balance all of those things. They're not people who don't have anxiety and don't have depression. Everybody has. But we have the ability to balance those so that we can function in society. The other thing is that when we talk about mental illness, there's a terrible stigma about it in America about mental illness. We need to get away from that. We need to recognize that mental illness is an illness very similar to any other illness we think of. And so I want people to, for a moment, take a step back and think about a couple of scenarios. So mental illness sometimes is like an appendicitis. It sort of comes out of nowhere. You didn't expect it. It became an issue. You had to seek help, professional help. That professional help gets you through it. The situation's resolved. And you go for the rest of your life and never have another problem again. Sometimes it's like asthma. It starts off small. It gets worse. You reach out for help. You try some medications. That doesn't work exactly right. You try a different medicine combination. You kind of get things settled down. You control it. And then every once in a while, it gets out of control again. And you need some help, and you get it back under control. But across your life, largely, it's manageable. And then sometimes mental illness can be like cancer. It comes on. It becomes all-consuming. You have lots of help from the healthcare industry. Your family is involved. Your coworkers get involved. You have strong support systems. It can be scary, it can be challenging, it can be complicated, and sometimes we have good outcomes, and sometimes we don't have good outcomes. But in many respects, mental illness is just like any other illness, and we need to see it as that. We also need to recognize that it's common. The National Institutes of Health will say that when we talk about any mental illness, in any given year, perhaps as many as 1 in 5 U.S. adults will have an issue with mental illness. Some are minor, some are more severe. When we look at the ones that are more severe, those that really impact your life and impact your ability to function. The National Alliance on Mental Illness says that that may be up to as much as 6% of people will have a serious mental illness across their lifetime. So that's not uncommon to some of the other diseases I just talked about, including asthma and appendicitis and cancer. Very, very common, but we stigmatize it. And part of that stigmatization has really hurt us as a nation because we have chronically underfunded, chronic stabilizing mental health care, which prevents us from, theoretically, from getting into the crisis situation. And again, I want to draw your attention to my analogy with asthma. With good asthma care, very few people will have their exacerbations. But with inadequate chronic asthma care, they're going to have more exacerbations. And then the other thing that complicates it with mental health is that unfortunately, a lot of times, the first responder to a mental health crisis is a police officer. And when we think of law enforcement in America, well, we don't always think of them as a mental health provider, and yet they are thrust into that position. So there are a number of things that come together, but the bottom line, what I'd really like to get across to folks is we need to think of mental illness as an illness, and it needs to be approached and treated as such, and we need to make sure that when people get into a crisis, that we respond appropriately, and that's a lot of the work has been done to make that more likely to occur. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Dr. Purse. Let me bring back Chief Fenner to speak specifically on these programs as well.
Thanks again, Mayor. The mayor hit on a lot of programs, and I just want to back up and kind of explain them because a lot of acronyms and a lot of different things are going on. But first of all, thank you again. Thank you for the funding. Police officers should never be left alone to deal with persons suffering from mental illness. It's just not a good end in most cases. So thank y'all so much for the funding. I want to start with the working with crisis intervention requires multiple pronged approach. We've had a nationally recognized programs served in teaching and sites for enforcement around the country. However, there's always room for improvement. Much of this is required significant funding. To that end, we're grateful again to the mayor for expanding the programs. Crisis called Diversion Program. It's a joint program between the city and Harris County. The calls are diverted by counselors in our emergency communication centers. So a lot of times, an officer or another clinician don't even have to go out. They can handle it over the phone. So that's a great thing. MCOT, Mobile Crisis Outreach Teams. It's a mental health team that responds without police officers, just the clinicians, on those scenes that it's not deemed it's a danger to them. CORE, also known as Clinician and Officer Remote Evaluation Program. This is where we're going to take 80 police officers and equip them with computers, and once they go to the scene, they can talk with the clinician from that scene. They don't have to bring them out to the scene, and they can communicate with them and get those consumers the services that they need. Finally, the CERT team. It is paired with an HPD officer and a clinician. These are the scenes that and it might be violence or a danger involved. We get that team with the clinician and the police officer, and it's been very, very successful, and thank you for that. The DART, Domestic Violence Response Team. We have an officer with also a counselor and sometimes a nurse to get to that scene where this is domestic violence, give that individual some services that they need right away so we can remove them from that situation, and it saves lives. So thank you for that funding. Thank you.
And Wayne, I know you were not scripted, but Harris Center is a key component to all of this. Do you want to have some comments? Yeah, that's okay. Now, did I capture it all? Did I capture it? Okay, thank you so very much. Let me just say, from a mental health perspective, the task force recommendations will be transformational. But what will even be more transformational is the additional mental health funding from the legislature, from the state, that will get us on the front end. This state desperately needs more mental health funding. What we are doing is that we are providing diversion measures when people are already in crisis, and we are diverting them away, in a sense, from just classifieds, but to clinicians or counselors. But what is needed even more is additional mental health funding for community health that will keep people from getting to that crisis phase. And until we do that, you can look at these reforms. But let me just say, one of the things that the task force, and I remember, Larry, when we was here before, you said that these recommendations were not just to the city and the police. These were recommendations to the community, to the city as a whole. This is where we are today is not just the fault of the cities or police departments. It's the fault of society that has underinvested in people. And quite frankly, until the state provides significantly more funding for mental and behavioral health, for substance abuse, we are still going to miss the mark, okay? We're going to miss the mark. And then lastly, I want to touch on is the area of training. We've talked about I-67, the executive orders. We've talked about Independent Police Oversight Board. We've talked about calling for to de-escalate, the right to intervene, the right not to shoot at moving vehicles, the right to give, where possible, a verbal warning before utilizing deadly force. All of this, too, becomes a part of the training. And I know HPD has been effectively integrating these things into their training. And fortunately, there's a new training facility that has now been built. And I want to thank Tillman Fatinda and the HPD Foundation for making that possible. But many of these things are already being instituted in the training. And let me bring back, Chief, no, I'm working a little bit. Let me bring you back one more time.
Hey, the challenge is with the mayor, he's so detailed. He take all your speaking points. But let me tell you something. The use of force. You can't have use of force and policy changes and you don't change hearts and minds in training. So I'm so glad that the task force has hit on some of the things that we need to change, but also that we're doing a lot of things even before that. But we're going to continue to work as a city and do more. In the way of implicit bias, y'all talked about that in the task force. Implicit bias and scenario-based training. Also, crisis intervention. All those kind of trainings are in there, and we're going to continue to do that and continue to make our city safer, because if we don't listen to what people are telling us, what they need us to do in training, it's going to be problematic. So we're going to have all that, and we also, Mayor, we're going to have universities helping us with training, conducting those surveys, and that's a great thing. And not only one university, universities from all walks of life, historically African-American universities. So we're going to use, we had one class, Building Trust and Trauma. Now, that was to look at the deep-rooted racism against law enforcement throughout the years. Not saying that our officers are bad people, but just looking at that, understanding what people go through on both sides. And we started that before the task force. So those are the things that you're going to see at our HPD Academy, and your chief is going to be out there as well, making sure that training, and we're doing what we say we can do. My whole executive team, we're going to be out there. So thank y'all.
I do want to underscore, just on the community engagement piece, HCC, Councilmember Cisneros, I believe, is already working with HPD, where HPD will be bringing on interns as a part of a workforce study program, not just for the summer, but throughout the entire academic year. So it is really about going beyond with this tree building branches and establishing meaningful relationships within our communities, working with our community colleges, our colleges and universities, our community organizations on that front. Let me just say, we would not be at this point in terms of these recommendations without the work, the dedication of the mayor's task force on police reform. And I want to give a great deal of credit to those 45 members who participated. And then I just want to really place a star by Larry Payne, who chaired this whole process. And I don't think there's anyone better in a position to speak to what we have laid out today. And let me just say, this continues to be a work in progress. It continues to be. But I think when you look at them, I think, Larry, over half of the recommendations that y'all have put forth are being implemented. And certainly many of the major ones are being implemented. And so I want to bring you up, Larry, and you can speak to these recommendations. This is one individual I cannot say enough for. Since the recommendations came back in September, Larry has been in my office several times talking about these recommendations and the timeline and the next steps. So he has really been on it. And I don't think he minds me saying it, and through his own personal challenges, he has stayed very, very focused. And Larry epitomizes the greatness of our city. And that is people going over and above, even sacrificing themselves for the greater good. And I believe the work that this task force has done will benefit this city for years and years to come. And I do believe that what we're doing here what I do know is taken note by other cities from across the country. As a member of the U.S. Conference of Mayors and soon to be the president of the African American Mayors Association, I know many of those mayors are watching us as we speak right now. But I want to give a great deal of credit to Larry for just being the sort of leader that was able to bring people together, a very diverse group, to come up with these recommendations. And I don't think there's a better person to speak to what we are doing today than Larry Payne.
Are you blown away yet? You should be. To put together a great recommendation and a great set of recommendations to the task force hard work is one thing. To see those recommendations come into fruition and be implemented is an entirely different situation. To Mayor Turner, to his team, and to his staff, I want to just say thank you for all of our hard work that has got us this far together in getting to this day. And it is a wonderful step to see this go forward. So thank you. We have come this far by faith and by hope, but a special kind of hope. Hope can be a dream, a nightmare, or a reality. Not just head cognitive hope, I think, I worry, I pray. Not just heart affective hope, I feel bad, sad, I feel the pain. But we have and have had throughout this process behavioral hope. Hope that is achieved through constant, consistent action and behavior. We will now have accountability, the beginning of change. As I mentioned, thank again to Mayor Turner, to the City Council members, to Chief Finner, the task force committee chairs, and the task force itself. And our motto for the task force has always been a safe city for all. If we do not go deep, we will not go far. We are pleased with today's pathways and guideways and guidelines established here today, and we look forward to more to come yet. As Mayor Turner mentioned, we are 50% there or more, particularly tackling and capturing some of the big things, some of the big ticket items within the task force report. Others will come. In a video conference call last evening with the Mayor Turner and the entire task force preceding today's announcement, you could feel from the task force that we've started a movement, a true movement around these issues for change, a true movement for such a time as this, a true movement that understands that we're all in this together as Houstonians. Police reform is society's reform. Police reform is society's reform. Knowing that change never comes at the speed you think it should, but change does come. Change does come, and change will continue to come. For such a time as this calls us to be about systems change, community engagement. It calls all citizens of the city of Houston, the people are the city, to move away from the traditional, not even the transitional, but to the transformative. This is transformative times. This is transformative work. This is transformative of a society, a community, a city. This is something that we're doing not only for us today, for the walking, talking now generation, we're doing it for the future of those yet waiting to be born. Future Houstonians will benefit from all that we're doing here today. That work is critical to be ongoing and to be truly transformative. I'll say it again, police reform is society's reform. From 1963, from the words of Mahalia Jackson to Martin Luther King Jr. standing on the platform, tell them the dream, Martin. Tell them about the dream. From Rodney King 30 years later to today's native son, George Floyd, the reality of us living in the George Floyd reality of today. We, the task force, along with you as all the citizens, look forward to the ongoing implementation, transparency, accountability of the task force report. To you, the citizens of Houston, know that you have a dynamic team working together to ensure that the reforms continue to grow and develop. If you have not read the task force report, do yourselves a favor. You will be pleased, surprised, and educated to the issues and facts dealing with police reform. This is not a simple process. It is a very in-depth process. It has many arms and many tenants and many places to go to look at it. We did the research, we did the homework, we put it together in a way that everyone could read it, digest it, and understand it, because we want everyone involved in this. It is our process. It is this community's process. So we need your help. Chief Turner has said that he is doing, part of his priority goals is developing community trust. Developing community trust. Well, community trust is about building relationships. Relationships that are built, nurtured, and maintained through mutual trust and respect. Through mutual trust and respect, because nothing happens without trust. And so the importance of just doing it is to be developing those relationships with mutual trust and respect. He, as he mentioned, will be reaching out to you. Reach out to him. See something, say something. Remember, we're all in this together. And I urge you again to get your hands on that task force report. You can go to the City of Houston's website, Boards and Commission, to the link Task Force Report. What is ahead of us as Houstonians is to be truly the example to the rest of urban cities in this country. This issue that we're dealing with, police reform, is something that has grasped the nation. It has taken us all into an understanding of reflection and meditation and prayer and trying to figure out what's the next steps. We have a blueprint here in Houston. We have a mayor and council members and police chief dedicated to making it happen. But we need all of you as the citizens of Houston to be part of this process. It is a process of engagement. It is a process of listening and learning together. It is a process of being willing to play our roles and our part. We all have distinct roles and parts to play in making this happen. I feel very strongly about this city. I know we can do it. I know we will do it. Mayor Turner, Chief Fender, we look forward to working with you as we continue to do this very, very important work. Thank you.
Again, thank you. Thank you so very much, Larry. I also want to thank Minal Patel Davis of the Office of Mayor's Office of Dealing with Human Trafficking and Domestic Abuse. And then I want to thank Lisa Kent over IT as well, and her entire team for working with us along the way. And I want to thank all of you, of course, for being present on all sides. Doug, thank you so very, very much. Bishop Dixon, NAACP, all of the members of the task force. Let me thank all of you who participated at any level. And again, I certainly want to acknowledge these council members here for their active participation. I appreciate you. And thank you all so very, very much. Having said that, we'll take any questions that you may have right now.
Hi, Mayor. Is this on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Some widespread changes, obviously. I heard you say you'd be signing an executive order on the oversight. Will these other changes, the body camera, the dashboard, that kind of stuff, will they be codified somehow or approved by city council so they can't be, undone by a new mayor?
They certainly, at the very minimum, through maybe an executive order, but they may come through the form of some ordinance as well. We'll take a look at that. And I know I'll be visiting with the chair of Homeland Security, Public Safety. I know that they were going to have some hearings, because what's important, we're having this press conference, but I've had this conversation with Councilman Pollard and others. This is just the first phase of disseminating it. It's important to get this information out into the community itself. They need to know about the dashboards. We just can't rely on this press conference to get the word on this dashboards. So quite frankly, there needs to be meetings and engagements within the communities so that they will know. They need to know about what we're doing on the crisis intervention. All of that's critically important. So there are a lot of additional stakeholders, but in terms of codifying it, we certainly will do everything we can to make it, I think it's going to be difficult for any next mayor to change it anyway, but we certainly will take the necessary steps to make sure that we move forward. The next mayor should build on top, not take away.
And then on timeline, I know you said the dashboard will be up by the end of May. I assume it might take some time to hire those teams, the diversion teams, and build those out. These other changes in terms of policy, like the body camera and that kind of stuff, are those effective sort of immediately today, or will that take some time as well?
On the release, that's effective as of today going forward. And I do want to, where's Director Hall? Is he here? Director Hall, who's of the Mayor's Task Force on Veteran Affairs, also was instrumental in working on these reforms. He would be here, I think, today, but unfortunately, I guess the Biden administration said, we gave you the money, I can take your people. So Director Hall is heading to the Biden administration in D.C. So tomorrow will be his last day. But yes, effective immediately.
Okay. And then just a couple questions on the details. In the complaint form, there was something mentioned about a sworn affidavit. Can you guys revisit that or elaborate on what that is and when or why it's necessary?
I think that was in the past.
Oh, that was the past?
That's the past.
Okay, so that will no longer be needed.
Right. Lisa, can you speak to that specifically? And the Chief, you want to speak to it too, Chief? Why don't you go first?
Yeah. Not requirement on the dashboard, but there are 143 rules, local state government code, that we have to abide by, but that does not stop somebody from coming into the door. The main thing is we get that complaint, and we can follow up with them, and if we need the sworn affidavit, we'll get it from them. But the main thing is an easy way for them to file a complaint and move forward with it.
Oh, okay, so they won't have to do that before filing the
No,
complaint?
sir.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
And then, Chief, you might be the best one to handle this one too, but I think you guys said the officers on the dashboard in terms of disciplinary actions will be de-identified. Why is that, and is it possible that could change in the future?
Well, we got some laws pertaining to that as well. You know, your payroll number and badge number when you're still an employee. So we got to look at that. But we want to be as transparent as we can within the laws, okay? All right.
And then, Mayor, not to reduce this to a simple metric, but I think Larry might have mentioned more than half the recommendations at this point would be implemented. Do you have a number on where you guys are on those 104?
I know it's easily it's way more than 50%, of it, because these are not all the steps that have been taken. There are some additional steps that have already been taken, but for purposes of this press conference, yeah. So we'll compile all of that, but way more than 50% of those 104 recommendations are now in effect.
All right, thank you.
Mayor, do you have a timeline, given this new protocol for releasing camera footage? Are you planning on releasing the Harding Street videos or any of the additional?
We're going forward. We're not going back.
So, but there's been a lot of concerns from community activists about not just Harding Street, but all these police-involved shootings in the last year or two.
We're going forward, Maya. We're not going back.
So none of those
We're
existing
going
camera
forward,
videos are going to be released?
Maya, let us focus on the things that are taking place today. We adhering to the task force recommendations 1 and 2 on the timeline for the release. And we're doing that. With respect to the Independent Police Oversight Board, those have been restructured. With regards to the Deputy Inspector General, we now have a person appointed. With respect to a new chair of the Independent Police Oversight Board, that's being done. With respect to the community engagement, we're moving forward on that front.
But what do you say to, I've talked to a lot of these community activists, and I'm sure you're aware of their concerns, which is, that's great, you're going forward for maybe a police-involved shooting that has not yet happened, but we want more answers for the police-involved shootings that have happened.
We are addressing the recommendations of the task force, Maya. Now, you can go back and pick up any case in the past, but the task force is futuristic in nature. And the purpose of this press conference is to address the mayor's task force on police reforms in a futuristic point of view. And that's what we are doing. Let's not move the goalposts on me now.
So there's no plans to change?
We are addressing the mayor's, I hope you will agree with me, that we are addressing the 104 recommendations, at least the large majority of them that were outlined by the mayor's task force on police reform. And that's what we are doing. Please don't move the goalposts on me now.
And then can you talk about, I know that this is about police reform. Do you believe, because there's a lot of Houstonians right now who are concerned about crime and other statistics going up, do you believe that this reform will help in that regard, or do you believe that's two separate issues? Like solving murders or increasing crime, do you believe all this set of reforms that you're announcing and going to implement moving forward would help with the overall crime issue?
Well, let me just say, you've got an increased number of road rage cases out there. Okay? People do have to assume some responsibility for crime and reporting crime. This is not a catch-all for fixing everything. And I think it would be unfair to look at it as a catch-all to fix everything. And I would like to believe that we certainly can acknowledge the significant steps that have been taking place here. Now, what I heard from the media a few weeks ago is that we were moving too slowly. Can we at least acknowledge that we are taking some significant steps today moving forward? Yeah, but Chief Finner.
I just want to respond to that right quick, Maya. True reform, what we have here, a lot of input from the community and listening ears from the police department. It brings people together. So it's our hope that it will help us drive down the crime. All right, thank you.
But I do want to say that it's going to take a holistic approach. It's going to take a holistic approach. It's not just going to be the responsibility of police or the just members of city council or the municipal courts. All of us have to assume responsibility in driving down crime. All of us. It's going to require significant investments on multiple levels. And that's why you can't, when you start talking about crime, we have been laser focused at addressing communities that have been underserved and underinvested through the Complete Communities initiatives. But all of us have to assume the responsibility for driving down crime. Yes, sir.
Mayor, this is a question from Channel 11, We're the Pool. Mayor Turner and Chief Finner, this question both for you. You're both lifelong Houstonians. What do these reforms mean to you, and how significant are they for the city as a whole? And the second part to that question is, do you model these reforms after other cities, counties, or states? If so, where and how successful have they been?
Well, quite frankly, other cities are looking at the city of Houston. Let me just say, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the African American Mayors Association, many of whom are taking note of what's taking place today, they've been anxiously waiting to see what the city of Houston was doing. Even on our crisis intervention and response teams, there are mayors, for example, in the U.S. Conference of Mayors that acknowledge the city of Houston had this in place going back to the 1990s. And even the task force acknowledged that our CERT teams are some of the best in the country. But the task force has said, you've got a good model, you just need to expand it. You have 16, for example, CERT teams, or 18, but that's not enough. You need more. And so what we are doing is that we are building on an effective model. And then what we have heard is that we need to divert people away from just classified responding. And if you notice, one of the key investments are the 18 additional teams where we are diverting them utilizing clinicians and not classified. Police officers won't be responding. Those are clinicians. I heard that quite effectively from Councilmember Plummer, you know. And so we are addressing that aspect. So many cities across the country are looking at what the city of Houston is doing. All the banning chokeholds, the right to intervene, giving warnings where possible before using deadly force. They are looking at the advancements that we have made. The website with the 5 dashboards, you know, they're wanting to see that. So this is, yes, as a native Houstonian and someone who grew up in this city, someone who has grown up, for example, in communities that have been underserved, yeah, this is a very, very important moment. But it's even more gratifying because it was Houstonians and organizations and representatives of our community groups that put together these recommendations. They put together these recommendations, and we are now acting on them, and we will continue to act on them. So I'm gratified by what's taking place here today. I'm inspired even by my own council members, you know, because this has been a collective effort, and each one has been pushing each other. Okay, we didn't just get here by ourselves, so it's been a total collective effort, and quite frankly, this is the way Houston does. And then to have a person like Larry Payne, where did Larry go? Right behind you. Yeah. I'm inspired by Larry Payne, and you have to get to know his. Once you get to know his story, then it is a story that should inspire all Houstonians to know his story and the commitment that he has made at this particular time in his life. So yeah, I'm excited. Please, we're not done yet. I'm very grateful and thankful, for example, for the additional dollars that we are receiving, that we're able to invest in the crisis intervention. So I certainly want to thank the Biden administration. You take a few more of my people, you know. So yeah, I'm pleased. Chief Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. It's something to say about homegrown, but homegrown policies and procedures that are tailor-made for the city. People from the outside threw a lot of stones, and they were talking, what was the committee doing? What are we doing? We were in the House working. Larry Payne and our command staff, our planning division, we have been working, sharing information, getting to this point. So I'm excited today. I'm excited for our police officers. I'm excited for the city, because the goal is, look, not to throw stones. It's like, how can we be better? And we're pretty damn good here in Houston. People are asking, and they're looking. They're asking us questions. So I'm excited today. Your chief a little bit tired, a little sleep deprived, but I'm excited, buddy. Thank you. All right.
Mayor, this question from Fox 26. They're asking, I know your dashboard's going to go up soon. They're asking for numbers regarding the department's cite and release program. How many tickets have been issued since it was implemented, and are they considering the program successful? Are you considering the program successful thus far?
Yeah, I'm considering the program successful, and they can hit that button and go online and get that information when they go live. That's why we implemented the dashboard. I wish I could pull it up in my head, but that online component is not working, you know, but it will soon go live. But I am excited about the program. I'm very excited about the work that the council members have done in bringing to life the dashboards, because quite frankly, they've had a key role in this, and I'm the recipient, you know, of it. Yes,
Good morning. Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, everyone. You indicated that the video of the body cams will be released within 30 days under certain guidelines. And this might be more for Chief Finner. There are certain officers that do not wear body cams. So radio transmissions in those situations, Chief Finner, Will those be released to the public?
When we need to, but let's focus on the body worn cameras. Anybody that's on the front line in our agency that's running calls for service, they are equipped with the body worn cameras. Even our SWAT detail. We've changed policy, so you know, if there's a need to release, we want to be as transparent as we can, you know, but let's see what happens.
Does it cover radio transmissions?
No, we're very clear on that. Officer-involved shootings, where there's injury, or where there's death, okay?
And separately, and I just say this because, as you know, there are some officers who can be involved in an injury case or a death case in which they're not wearing a body cam.
Yeah.
So I just want to be clear here. Will their radio transmission be transparent in that situation or not?
We'll see. Let's get to it when we cross that road.
And Mayor, can legal, this is to the mayor, sir, can legal at all block this? You might say, listen, we're going to put this out in 30 days, but can the legal department of the city say, we're not going to allow this video to go out for any reason?
Well, I'm certainly not going to preempt my legal department. Each case has to be viewed separately and stand on its own. But I will say, in terms of the recommendations that's coming, and again, I want to take us back to the recommendations. I don't want us to move the goalposts on us now. Now, let me just be clear. We take a lot of criticism. The media said, oh, we're going too slow on the recommendations. Now we're standing before you dealing with the recommendations. Let's not move the goalposts, okay? And so in terms of one of the specific timelines, providing the body cameras footage within a 30-day period, especially where there's been a critical injury or a death, because please look at the language on that, but within 30 days or less, okay? That's what we intend to do. Now, there may be some exigent circumstance, I don't know what it is, but the commitment is to release within 30 days or less, and to release even sooner to investigating authorities.
Thank you for the clarity on that, sir, because that's what we're asking for. Last question here. You opened up your statements, today's presentation, by saying about advocating for families and about transparency and accountabilities. Yesterday, the city announced that they're going to hire an outside law firm in the case of Harding Street to defend the city.
Sure.
So how do people know at home, or what do you have to say to the Houstonians out there? They're saying, well, the city is saying this on one day, but on the day before, they're hiring an outside law firm to defend them on a case in which 2 people were killed by officers who lied.
I've been a lawyer for 40 years. I've been on the defendant side, defending corporations and companies when they've been sued in bad cases. They were entitled to a vigorous defense. I've been on the side for plaintiffs where they have been severely burned and killed, and roof fell on their head and 3 people died. And I've been the attorney on that case. Regardless of which side you're on, you're entitled to a vigorous and zealous defense. That's from the State Bar Code Canon of Ethics. The City of Houston, I am the fiduciary, I have a fiduciary relationship to protect this city, and that's what I intend to do. When I cease to exercise my fiduciary relationship, it's the time that I need to step aside. This city is deserving of the best representation to defend itself. That is my job. That's what people voted for me to do. Council members are fiduciary. We have a fiduciary relationship, and we have to honor that. Now, sometimes, as you go through the process and evidence is presented and information is presented, who knows what the outcomes will be. But until you get there, if you are involved in a situation, a family member, for example, and they are sued or find themselves in a legal situation, regardless of how bad, I would recommend that they get themselves an attorney. The city deserves no less. Now, having said that, let me do this, because I do want to hear from 2 council members and representing everybody, maybe even more. Councilmember Cameron's chair, and I know Councilmember Pollard also worked on the slides, and Councilmember Cisneros, I want to hear from you as well on education. Okay, and then we go wrap up.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to take a moment, Mayor, to thank you for the incredible collaboration that he has done with City Council, and to my colleagues. We have all worked together to put forward recommendations, and the mayor listened to us. We've had numerous meetings with him, with others throughout the city. So Mayor, thank you for your collaboration, really. As Chair of Public Safety and Homeland Security for the ARC Cities Committee, we listened to hours and hours of public comment and reviewed over 100 pages of submitted testimony, and we shared this with the task force. So to all of the citizens that have come forward to use their voice, we have heard you. We will continue to listen, and I want to emphasize, I know him personally. Chief, you talk a lot about listening, and he does that. And so we're lucky to have a chief of police and an entire police force behind him that is committed to this and our reforms as well. And as the mayor said, this is one piece of it, but we have to talk about this holistically. And if we want to address and tackle institutionalized racism, we have a lot of other work to do in so many areas of society. So this is an amazing step today. I'm so thrilled to see these recommendations being put to use. And Mayor and Chair Payne, I think it's way more than 50% because these are some of those major big ticket items that you cannot quantify. These are significant impacts that we will see immediately in the community. So thank you all. Thanks to the public, to my colleagues for your partnership through the committee, to Chief Finner, and especially to our mayor and the task force for all of their hard work.
Well, today is truly a transformational day. When you think of police reforms, you think of improvement. And today is all about accountability. It's all about transparency, access, education, and working collaboratively with our department, with the different community partners that are out there, and with the city. When we think about the dashboard, that was a concept that I came up with last year during our budget process. And I wanted to find out ways in which we can be more transparent with the public when it came to police misconduct, data, statistics, as it pertains to HPD. And the first person I went to was Ray Hunt with the Houston Police Officers Union. I sat down with him. I said, other cities are putting out more information to the public to build community trust. And I showed him this dashboard called Project Comport. It is something that other departments and cities have used to put out information and data from the police department to the public. And in true Houston fashion, when I presented it to the mayor and to the HITS department, they said, we can build our own. It could be better. It could be unique. It could be tailored just for the city of Houston. And so over the past several months, we've been working really hard with HPD, listening to those who called in to the Public Safety Committee and with the HITS department and consultants to develop what you saw here today. And today's just a glimpse. Going forward, we're gonna have more education and tutorials on how to use it and how to best take that data and information and make our city safe. So I wanna thank the mayor, I wanna thank the task force, city council members, and the department for all of your hard work. This has been a collaborative effort, and this is a great day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. I am so very honored to be here for such a time as this. This is certainly a pivotal moment in the city, and I thank the mayor and my constituent, Mr. Larry Payne, and the task force for their countless hours of input. But I must say that this is this is certainly a pivotal moment, and I didn't coin this phrase, but it is easier to change a law than a man's heart. And so certainly this is the beginning of what I hope will be a change that will make an impact on the lives of so many that need this. And so here again, I thank you. I certainly thank Councilmember Pollard. We did offer some suggestions, a group of 5 of us, and certainly the mayor listened, the task force listened, and I am very honored to be a part of this. Thank you.
I'm the chair of the Childhood and Youth Committee, and when the recommendation came out in the report, I read through it very carefully, looking for how, what the impact was, what were the interactions with young people. And I came to learn there are 17 programs or so that, that the police have had over the years with children and young people that some of them, there's huge opportunity to make some improvements, to consolidate, maybe to let some go, to provide additional funding to others, because when you read the part that really talks about where young people are connected, it's in the chapter on relational policing. And the focus there, of course, we've heard a lot today, is about how building trust and that connection to then building improving public safety, and that the goals that are outlined in there talk about how important it is to have input from all participants. And children make up, and young people make up a big part of who our police officers interface with. And the whole police department is, I asked Chief Finner today, can you tell me what percentage of your cases involve young people? And he says, it's a lot. So we don't know the numbers on that, but we do know that young people interact a lot with the police, and that when we look at the dashboard and we're breaking things down into ethnicities and to all the other things, I think it's also helpful to be looking at the age of people, and make sure that the efforts are targeted to where young people are also. And I'm so appreciative of Chief Finner. We've been meeting regularly since December exactly on this issue, and I can't tell you how committed he is to making sure that we get this part of it right, and that this initiative that the mayor spoke about earlier, partnership with HCC and hopefully other campuses to employ as in a part-time capacity 100 student interns that are at HCC all across the city who would work at the police department, not just in a police officer capacity, but in all kinds of areas. If they're in IT or they're in business or they're in automotive fields, to really to come in and have a great experience, that helps them with their careers. But also there's a huge opportunity for communication and relationship building that these young people coming in can also help HPD up their game. I mean, this is the most technologically savvy group of people that have ever lived, and so they can really help HPD communicate back. So I'm excited about that, and I really appreciate this opportunity today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I knew it was going to go a little bit long, so I would tell you, for those who are leaving, lunch is being provided for you at any of the area local restaurants. They are waiting for you, and we'll take your order. Okay, so thank you so very much. Have a good day.